Good day, Biology DES Module 1 student. The students that are doing Diploma in Education Secondary. Welcome to 2018. Again, another opportunity for you to receive some guidelines on how to prepare for the examination. Very good. As indicated on the slides there, my name is VG Shilongo. Now let's get to the topic that you need to pay attention to. Now, you need to make sure that the characteristic of living organisms, when you are looking at the characteristic of living organisms, familiarize yourself very well with the definition. There are 7 characteristics of living organisms, as well as the descriptions. The description about it, as well as application of knowledge. You should be able to apply the knowledge about the characteristic of living organisms in any situation. Scenario can come and ask you that require you to apply the knowledge regarding the characteristic of living organisms. Its characteristic of living organisms content is very straightforward. Therefore, I encourage you to read through very well. Read through, starting from the movement. One of those characteristics of living organisms is movement, respiration, reproduction, growth, excretion, nutrition, and irritability. Know their definition. Their description, for example, when you look at respiration, there are 2 types of respiration. Know them. So under each heading of the characteristic of living organisms, make sure you go through those notes and understand them. Now let's look at the second topic that you should also familiarize yourself with. The cell structures and the cell organization, as well as the microscope. Now the cell structure, you were introduced to the 2 types of cell, the eukaryotic cell and the prokaryotic cells. Now you need to know their structure. Structure here, I'm referring to the parts. The parts such as the cell wall, the cell membrane, the mitochondria, the cytoplasma, the chloroplast. Those are some of the common structures that you find in any typical eukaryotic cells, as well as the prokaryotic cells. Now, when you're talking about the prokaryotic cells, here we are referring to a bacterium cells. Now, also know the function as well as the difference between the prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells, the similarity as well. So, let's look at the cell organization. Cell organization, we are referring to what are the different parts that make up an organism. We are starting with a cell. A cell is made up of an organelles. We have different organelles there. For example, we have the nucleus, we have the cell membrane, the cytoplasma. Those structures make up a cell. A group of a group of different organelles make up a cell. Now, a group of similar cells make up a tissue. A group of different tissue makes up an organ. A group of different organ and tissue working together makes up an organ system. Now, a group of different organ system and organ make up an organisms. That is what we are referring to as cell organization. Different levels that makes up an organisms. Familiarize yourself with example of cells that we find in animal cell as well as plant cell. Also, example of tissues that are found in plant cell as well as animal cell. Also, example of different organs found in animal cell and plant cell, as well as different organ system that are found in animal cells as well as in plants. So, for example, in plants, we have what we call a transport system, where we have, for example, the xylem vessels and a phloem tube. But in animals, we have plenty of organ system, such as we have the digestive system, we have the excretory system, we have the reproductive system, we have the respiratory system, we have the circulatory system, quite a large number of systems. But what I meant with cell organization here, please familiarize yourself with the cells, the content of a cell, the tissue that are found in that organisms. You must be able to know their example. You must be able also to know the structure of those tissue. Let's say, for example, one of those tissue, it's a red blood cells. Remember, our definition of a tissue is a group of similar cells working together to perform a particular function. So here I'm again using an example of a red blood cell. Now, if you have more than one red blood cells, they make up a tissue. So now, the red blood cell, you should also be able, now those tissue, what structures do they have which enable it to perform its function? So very careful there. You should be able to know this tissue structure, the tissue's function, and the adaptation of that tissue to its function. Let's look at an example of a red blood cells. The red blood cells, its function is to transport oxygen from the alveolus in the lungs to the respiring tissues. Now, how is these red blood cells are adapted to carry oxygen from the alveoli in the lungs to the to the respiring tissue? One of the adaptation is that they have few structures. They only have a mitochondria as well as the cytoplasma. So in order to give more space to carry more oxygen. So it also have hemoglobin, molecules that have a higher affinity of oxygen. So read this information in your textbook, read them carefully, and you should be able to know, as I said earlier, the tissue. We have different tissue both in animal as well as in plants. Now, the next topic, microscope. Remember, many cells that make up organisms are very small. We cannot see them with our own eye. We usually say we are unable to see it with our naked eye. Therefore, microscope aid us to magnify these objects so that we can study them in details and so that we can understand them better. So microscope, you need to know the different parts of a microscope as well as their functions. Now, the next topic that you should also be familiarize yourself with, plant nutrition. Remember, plant nutrition is one of the 7 characteristics of living organisms. Now, here we are referring now to how plants make their own food. Remember, plants are photosynthesis, meaning that they produce their own food. Now, under the heading of plant nutrition, familiarize yourself with the leaf. Know the different parts of the leaf, the external part as well as the internal part. The internal part are the part that you are able to see when you view it under a microscope. Now, for example, you should be able to see the upper epidermis, the cuticles, the parasite cells, the spongy mesophyll cells, the guard cells, the air space, and the lower epidermal cells. So you should be able to know now, how are those tissue that makes up a leaf? Remember, a leaf is an organ. How are those tissue enable the leaf to perform its function? Remember, the leaf, its main function is to produce food. And there are many structures that are found in the leaf which enable it to do so. The minerals. Here the minerals I'm referring to minerals such as the nitrogen, the potassium, the phosphorus. How are these minerals important to plants? Remember, plants obtain these minerals together with water when these minerals are absorbed from the roots, when the minerals are absorbed from the soil. Now, and this mineral has function. Make sure you familiarize yourself with those functions of those minerals, as well as the process of photosynthesis. What is photosynthesis? What is a chemical function of photosynthesis? What is a word equation of photosynthesis? You should be able also to balance an equation of photosynthesis. Now, let's move on to transport in plants and animals. Transport in plants and animals, this topic basically provides you with information about how are the substances such as food, such as gases and waste product are transported throughout the plants and animal. So you should be able to know the transport in plants. Familiarize yourself with the concept of translocation. Familiarize yourself with a vascular bundle. When we are talking about vascular bundles, remember here we are talking about the xylem vessels as well as the phloem tube. Should also be able to know the function of these xylem vessels, the phloem tube, as well as the adaptation to their functions. When I talk about animals, the transport, we have a circulatory system which is made up of blood vessels. Those blood vessels are the ones that transport blood, and the blood carry nutrients, oxygen, heat, as well as waste product. So familiarize yourself with it's a lot of content when it comes to transport in plant and animal. Familiarize yourself with it very carefully. Now we also have another topic, diffusion and osmosis in plants and animal cells. Diffusion and osmosis is it's more of a practical topic, but very, very interesting. It's actually how this topic is providing you with information on how molecules or particles move into and out of the cells, either with plant cell or animal cells. Now, let's, for example, diffusion, we are referring to many molecules, specifically such as gases. Now, in plants and animal cells, plants need carbon dioxide to diffuse in the cells, in plant cells. And it also needs oxygen to diffuse out of the cell. Now, for gases to diffuse out, for diffusion to take place, it must move. Molecules must move from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. Take note, higher concentration means those molecules are more there to the lower concentration, meaning that the molecules are moving to where they are more, from where they are more to where they are less. Osmosis deals with water. Therefore, that's why we define osmosis as a passage of water molecules from a high water potential to a lower water potential through a partially permeable membrane. So osmosis, it's a movement of water. Water moving from where there are more to where there are less. Meaning that where you have free water molecules to where you have less free water molecules. Information are clearly indicated in your modules there with practical example. Familiarize yourselves. The structure of a virus. Virus is one of those things. I'm calling a virus a thing because it's one of the scientists are still struggling to place it, to classify it either as a living or non-living thing. So you need to know its structures, because the argument behind whether viruses are living things or non-living things are. Now virus, if we have to look at the argument that are supporting it as a living things, virus, they do have genetic materials. So that means they either have a DNA or they have their RNA. Now, them possessing a DNA or RNA, so that means they are capable of replicating. They are capable of reproducing, although they do it inside a host cell. you will not find any non-living things which can replicate. But virus, because it reproduces, it contains genetic materials, it is considered as a living thing. Those are the argument. We are not saying it's a living thing because that is the only two features it has. What are those features? As I said, genetic material, and it can use those genetic material to reproduce. Now, other argument that are stating that virus is a non-living thing is that virus, it does not carry out all 7 characteristics of living things. Remember, as we mentioned earlier, for an object to be classified as a living thing, it must carry out all the 7 characteristics. Unfortunately for the virus, it only carries out 1. And it does that inside a host cell. An object to be classified as a living thing, it must carry out all these 7 characteristics independently. Now, so please familiarize yourself with the structure of a virus. So the structure, you should be able to provide, for example, you should be able to label the virus diagram, for example, correctly. Let's move on. Now, the last topic that I would like you to look at is the importance and the application of enzyme. Enzyme are fascinating topic. It's a fascinating topic in biology. Enzyme are those things that I always compare to, like, it can be a vacuum machine. It can be a machine that help you to carry out certain tasks faster. Now, you should be able to know about the importance. First of all, know the definition of what is an enzyme. Remember, enzymes are protein that function as biological catalysts. Catalysts are, it's something that speed up chemical reaction. So inside our body, we have many enzymes which help to speed up chemical reaction. Those chemical reactions I'm referring to metabolic reaction. Now you need to know the definition, the example of enzyme, for example, the digestive enzyme, as well as the importance of enzyme. Remember, the importance of enzyme is to speed up chemical reaction inside our body. Photosynthesis in plants, respiration both in plants and in animal, will not take place faster if enzymes are not there. Thanks to the enzyme, chemical reaction inside our body, as I said, like respiration, protein synthesis, are able to take place faster because of enzyme. And the reason why we are active, the reason why we grow fast, the reason why we are able to carry out different activity on a normal basis is thanks to the enzyme. Because enzyme ensure that respiration take place faster so that we have energy to carry out different daily activities. So the application of enzyme, familiarize yourself. Where do we use enzyme? We can use it in food production. We can use it in baking, to bake, for example, when you are baking bread. We can also use it for the germinating of seeds. When the seed in plant growth, when the seed germinate. We can also use it in washing powder to remove biological stain. When I'm referring to biological stain, I'm referring to stain that we expose our clothes to from living organisms. These stains such as blood, egg yolk, all these are referred to as biological stain. And a washing powder that contains enzyme is called a biological washing powder. And that help to remove stain. Which stain? Biological stain. And make your clothes to really make your clothes clean and look really, really good. So, my main focus again with you, please, as you the topic are given to you, and remember this is for Biology Module 1, DES. So again, as I said, the topic, the characteristic of living organisms, the cell structure and the cell organization, as well as microscope, plant nutrition, leaf, where we are focusing on the leaf, all the information are under the leaf, minerals and photosynthesis, transport in plants and animal, diffusion, osmosis in plants and animal cells, the structures of a virus, as well as the importance and application of enzyme. Now, when you look at biology topic, there are many. The topic, the content under those heading, there are a lot. You are expected to understand such content. That's why we selected only this topic, because the content is a lot, but this can help you to really focus on the most important things. Now, for example, under the characteristic of living organisms, there are many information. You need to know everything there. Now, I am not saying you only be asked about the definition, but that's why I'm saying know everything under the characteristic of living organisms. Know everything under the cell structure and the cell organization, as well as microscope. Know everything about plant nutrition, leaf, mineral, and photosynthesis. Know everything about transport in plants and in animal. Know everything about diffusion and osmosis in plants and animal cells. Know everything about the cell structures, as well as know everything about the importance and the application of enzymes. Now, if you find out, for example, as you read through those topics and you came across a content that you don't understand, you definitely are welcome to email me at the email which is indicated there on the screen. You are also expected, if you don't understand, you are also be able to call at 081 328 7071. I repeat the cell phone number 081 328 7071 from 5 o'clock until 6:30. From 5 o'clock in the afternoon until 6:30. So that's all for the diploma in education secondary biology module 1 DES Bio21. Please, as I said, work hard. Try to use your Saturday and your Sunday or Friday to study, because usually from Monday to Friday you are busy with your other schoolwork. Try to use the Friday or Saturday to really pay attention to your study, because once you put more effort, you will definitely pass.